Hi, everybody. My name is Noreen Green, and you saw me up in the film. I conducted the orchestra of the Los Angeles Jewish Symphony, and it's really a privilege to be here at Vanderbilt to have this wonderful orchestra made up of Blair students perform the Symphony of the Holocaust. It's 15 minutes long, and as we said in the movie, it's in 5 movements. The first movement is the song of the Holocaust, which introduces everything. And then there's the prayer, and then the song of liberation, song of commemoration, and the joy of life at the end. I'm very, very privileged and honored to be sharing this stage with my good friend Adam Milstein. Adam is the program director of the Conlon Ziering initiative for the Recovered Voices, which is dedicated to performing music of Holocaust composers, survivors, those that didn't survive and those that did survive. And he is playing Shoni's violin. This is Shoni's violin. So we will play the Symphony of the Holocaust for you, and then we'll take some questions and talk a little bit.
Thank you so much for that wonderful and meaningful performance. We're now going to transition into the Q&A portion of our event. My name is Rebecca Fishkin. I'm a first-year student here and a committee member of the Holocaust Lecture Series. I'm going to introduce our three guests first. Dr. Noreen Green is the founding artistic director and conductor of the Los Angeles Jewish Symphony, which she created in 1994. An inspirational conductor, educator, and lecturer known worldwide for her knowledge and skill in presenting music with Jewish themes. She has served as guest conductor and lecturer in the United States, Israel, South Africa, Spain, Australia, Canada, and the Caribbean. Wherever she appears, Green aims to bring people together through the universal language of music through a Jewish lens. Adam Milstein is a violinist pursuing his doctorate at UCLA with master's and associate degrees from the Colburn School and bachelor's from the University of Michigan. Milstein is the program director of the Ziering Conlin Initiative for Recovered Voices at the Colburn School, where he encourages greater awareness and more frequent performances of music by composers whose careers and lives were tragically cut short by the Nazi regime in Europe. His musical career is comprehensive, performing as a soloist and concertmaster throughout the US and internationally with major orchestras. Dina Braun Griffin is the daughter of Holocaust survivors Shoni Alex Braun and Sherry Mendelovitz. In 2023, Dina fulfilled her father's final wish by traveling with her Los Angeles-based family to Poland, where Shoni's 15-minute Symphony of the Holocaust was played at the Auschwitz-Birkenau gates to bring beauty to a horrible place. You can view their bios in greater detail on tonight's program. We would like to welcome any questions you may have at this time.
I have a question for Adam. I want to ask, as a violinist, preparing this piece, obviously as a soloist, you want to put your own touches on the music, but there's also so much source material of Shoni's playing, especially the more stylistic and gypsy Romanian influence. How do you balance taking the source material, the recordings, and the influences of the region, and balance that with your own take on the music?
That's a really great question. I tried my best with it, and it's so cool to be able to have these source material recordings of Shoni playing. And again, just such an honor to play on his Galliano on which he composed the piece. It's rare to be able to look directly at a composer's work and influence. But I found that, of course, referencing Shoni was very important. Also, I love Enescu a lot, and I found that I was listening to a lot of Yehudi Menuhin's interpretations of Enescu's violin sonatas in particular, which had a very similar sort of Romanian influence in his styles, and trying to blend those worlds as best as possible. But nothing beats listening to the clips of Shoni actually playing himself and trying my best to emulate those large shoes to fill that he created so powerfully. So I tried. Thanks.
May I add to that? So this is the first time I've heard Adam play. And I have only heard a few other musicians, violinists play on this piece. And I have to say that I was just blown away. Your interpretation was so, you did it justice. I can't even begin to tell you like tenfold, and it was beautiful. And your passion and your soul, you got it. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much for being here and just for your incredible work. This was just outstanding. So my question has to do with Holocaust education, and I'm curious about what each of you think the unique role of the arts and music is in teaching young people about the Holocaust.
So the concert that you saw in the film was at the Soraya, which is they call it the Disney Hall of the San Fernando Valley, and it holds 1,400 people. We performed that for 2,000 4th through 12th graders. And the whole program not only had the music, but it also had clips of the composers talking about their music. So for me, and I also was very involved with the Violins of Hope program, which Chloe talked about. Music is a universal language, and it somehow allows people to hear the stories and not be afraid. Sometimes when you see the images and you hear from the actual survivor, it's harder to process what they're saying. But when you hear the music and you hear the story of the composer or the performer and how they survived, it somehow is more relatable to children. So we have an extensive Holocaust education program where we go into the schools and we talk about how the arts, not just music, but theater and painting. There's Theresienstadt had poetry of children and paintings, and how the ability to create in a place where it was so not about creating allows the human spirit to take themselves away from what is happening to their body. So I think it's important for children to understand, because even, today, when the kids are dealing with whatever they're dealing with, and if they can allow music or art or painting or poetry to help them survive, and whatever that means. I think it's relatable, more relatable in that way. And I know that probably you have some comments.
Just first of all, I would agree with everything that Noreen just said so eloquently. What I do at the Colburn School with the Recovered Voices Initiative is not solely a focus on Holocaust education, which is of course incredibly important, but the mission that I'm very passionate about, which has been passed on to me, and I worked very closely with a man named James Conlon, who's the music director of the Los Angeles Opera and a champion of this music, is to restore these composers back to their rightful place in the canon in 20th century Western art music, because there's about 2 generations of composers, dozens of composers, hundreds of works that were suppressed by the Nazis as a result of racial, genocidal, and political ideologies. The stories go on and on about these composers. Some were murdered in camps, some composed in camps, others were exiled, others died before the Nazis even fully came into power. But the Nazis were so thorough in their destruction, the Nazis and their collaborators, that they literally ripped these names out of history books. And there are many worthy composers that at least deserve to be listened to. And it's a great injustice that I'm trying to work directly to amend, to correct, because in music in particular, what's challenging to make something part of the canon, something like, let's say with art, there's been a lot of art that was suppressed by the Nazis, visual art. You can find this visual art, you can have a gallery, you can advertise it, you can have an exhibition, people can come look at the art, they can enjoy it, they can leave. Music takes a lot of components. It takes teachers, it takes performers, it takes audience members, it takes promoters, it takes publishers, it takes managers. It takes a lot to get music into the concert hall, let alone repeat performances, let alone something that can become effectively part of the canon of Western art music as we know it. And I am a firm believer that many of these composers are very deserving to be defined not only by the horrible ends to many of their lives, but also by their artistic merit and legacy, which is the case for dozens of these composers. And if you're interested to learn more about this, I highly recommend looking up Recovered Voices online. Follow me on Instagram, which is my name, Violin, which is not very original, but it's effective. And I post and talk a lot about these different composers. And for those of you here that are musicians and audience members, I highly encourage you to look into this treasure trove of basically untouched music that doesn't even have its own performance tradition as a result of the policies of the Nazis.
Hello? Oh, it was on the whole time.
Hello, I just had a quick question kind of piggybacking off what we just talked about. So as general audience members, just people of the community, what can we do to help with this diversifying of the canon?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, an audience member just being here and with an open heart and an open mind to even listening to this music is super important. And then it's our job as performers and interpreters to contextualize a lot of this, to make people understand why they might not know these names. And then it's your job as an audience member to listen to it. And if you like it, fantastic, listen to it again. If you don't like it, that's okay too, but listen to it at least one more time and see if you can start bringing it back, because it's just all about repeat listening. And if you're interested, delve into that interest. Mix up your Spotify playlist from the usual menu of Mozart, Bach, and Beethoven, as much as I love all of them, but we can also sprinkle in some other spices, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's up to all of us to contribute, I think, in that capacity the best that we can.
And along those lines, if you're interested in sharing the film with other friends and family, it is streaming on Sunstream, SUNN, Sunstream, and you can find it on that, and please get the word out. It's important.
That's very important. Thank you, Dinah.
Yeah.
The film is on Sunstream Productions. It's a new streaming service. They have lots of other good stuff. But this is the first documentary that they did, and we were very honored to be the first one up on Sunstream. So, yeah, share, please.
If I can add one more thing too, I just wanted to note also that this ideology that I'm sort of presenting, that we're presenting right now, doesn't apply solely to composers impacted by the Third Reich and by the Holocaust. This applies to all composers that have been suppressed for one reason or another, and it's our due diligence to really go and investigate those names that we don't know as well, especially if they were for non-artistic reasons and for racial, genocidal, political reasons why we don't know these composers. We need to really do our homework and research and find the music that we believe in, that we want to perform, and that we want to listen to. That's just, I think, our job as active performers and listeners.
Amen to that.
How did the violin come to this performance?
Well, you saw Jonathan Rubin, he's a member of our orchestra, and when I knew that Adam was coming here, and just so happened that Jonathan and Adam and I all had a performance together, and I asked Jonathan to bring the violin to show Adam to see if he would be willing to play. It's very difficult, those of you who are instrumentalists, to just change your instrument. Like, as a pianist, you just go sit at a new piano and you play. But as a violinist or a flutist, your instrument becomes a part of who you are. And the more you play on it, the more it becomes who you are. So for Adam to just pick up this Galliano, and I saw this happen, and he said, oh, and he had an epiphany, like, this is such an amazing instrument. And then he wanted to do it, and then we had to get insurance, and so that's how it happened.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
And that instrument, I mean, you all saw that I was particularly emotional, and still am. It's always bittersweet. But this particular violin has got, you can speak for this, and you can as well, an incredible tone, and it's very unique. And so when I heard Eric play it the first time I met him via Zoom, and certainly today when I heard, Ari talked about this earlier, when I heard Adam start to he was practicing it well, it blew me away, because it reminds me of my dad. And I've only seen a few people, like I said, play this instrument, the Symphony of Holocaust. The only other person that I've ever seen or heard play it was my dad. But again, Adam, I'm just telling you, I'm still speechless. I could listen to that over and over and over again. And well, so it is a really unique instrument.
Yeah, I just have a quick question maybe for you, Dina. As you know,
Dinah,
sorry.
it's okay. Everybody does it.
You know, as interpreters of music, we're constantly trying to get into the composer's head, understanding not just what was the intent of the notes, but what was it like for them while they were writing the piece. So I'm curious if you were with your dad while he was, writing the piece, and what was his state of mind, and what kind of things, what did he feel like? What did he talk about?
Great question. So my father actually wrote the symphony while he was in the Holocaust in his head. He didn't have any paper to write it down, so it was many years later when he put it to paper. And we talked about it a lot, and he kind of broke it down into the different movements about being captured and realizing in the song of the Holocaust what was happening. And I think even at first he didn't have a full concept of the atrocities that were ahead of him. And then, moving on to each piece, the prayer, when he kind of gets it, he has an understanding, and his feeling was just despair and hope and, belief in his faith in God.
It was strong in faith.
Yeah.
I can also speak to this because I met Shawnee in the 1980s. He came and I was a music director at a synagogue, and he was a guest speaker on the Holocaust, and they needed someone to accompany him on this Symphony of the Holocaust, but it wasn't yet orchestrated or anything. It was in manuscript, if you all know what that is. And I remember him coming and talking to me about his process of writing it and everything, and it was in its infant stages, and performing it with him, and it made such an impact on me, and that was in the 80s. And then when I founded the symphony in 1994, he had premiered it now with orchestra in 1992, and so in 1995 I did the West Coast premiere with Shawnee playing it. So I also worked with him as a soloist with the orchestra too, and he was very expressive about what was in his head and how he put it on paper.
Absolutely. And I'm going to just take a side note here. It trickled down to my son Dane, who you all saw on this in the film, and 2 months, not even 2 months, was 6 weeks after this, we went to Auschwitz. He was diagnosed with AML, acute myeloid leukemia, aggressive myeloid leukemia. He's fine. Thank you, dear God. But it's crazy to hear him speak ahead of time about learning from his papa that you have to live every day right to the fullest because you don't know what's going to happen, and every second, is meaningful. And he had a bone marrow transplant a year ago last Sunday, and he's doing really well. We spent 7.5 months at City of Hope in Los Angeles. It was brutal, a lot of radiation, a lot of chemo, and he had a very small chance of survival. And he believes, and very much so, that it was his faith in God, his Judaism, and what he learned and hearing from my dad, his papa, and knowing how his grandfather was a great-grandfather. And again, bittersweet and crazy to hear him speak like that. Even every time we see it, my friends who've seen it just kind of like their hair stands up on end because it was projection of what was going to happen. So, kind of just side note. Yeah.
Hello. I have a question for Adam, and that is, do you have like a website or catalog where we can find the works that you are studying?
Yeah, definitely. So my website is also incredibly unoriginal. It's just adammilstein.com, I think. And just be careful, I have 2 L's in my last name. There's another Adam Milstein who has 1 L. He's a very different person, if you guys know who that is. Not me. Adam Milstein, 2 L's. Also, if you look up Orel Foundation, O-R-E-L, there's a very extensive, not complete, exhaustive, but extensive list of many of these composers. It's a great jumping off point. We're also going to be launching a newly updated Recovered Voices website, which I'm working with the Colburn team on, which will be up with all this stuff. But long story short, my name on Instagram, and then also my name.com. There should be some info about composers. But right off the bat, look up Weinberg. That's a big one. Weinberg. Vyacheslav Weinberg. Check him out as a violinist. Amazing, amazing music.
Hi. Have there been, or maybe even to this day, other survivors who are outstanding musicians who survived the Holocaust and who heard your father's piece, and how do they react to this?
Oh, it's a good question. I'm not sure that I can answer that fully, but I do know that there were many, countless numbers of fans and people who were survivors who came to hear him and were followers of him, and he played concerts every year. And he played with some of the finest and was heard by many of the finest. Itzhak Perlman was one of them. So he wasn't a survivor, of course, but he was a big fan of my dad's.
The culture, Yiddish culture,
Mm-hmm.
at times very rich.
Yes.
So whoever survived, some of them had to be outstanding musicians.
Well, we do a lot of those composers. That's what we do. So, like Mario Casanova Tedesco, who escaped Mussolini and the fascists, and he became a film composer and a teacher of a lot of the film, John Williams and all of that. And a lot of the emigre composers were actually classical composers in Eastern Europe, and then they came to Hollywood and they made their mark in Hollywood. So, and there was a little club of them all that they would get together and have salons and perform for each other in LA. Arnold Schoenberg and Eric Zeisel and Schulhoff and Toch and Franz Waxman, and they were all buddies. And they all came together and would have strudel and schlag.
Some of them were enemies, I might add, too. There's a lot of buddies. There's also a lot of butting heads, too. It was nicknamed the Weimar of the Pacific. They all ended up in LA, actually in Palisades in particular. And there's a man named Thomas Mann, who was a very famous German writer who was anti-fascist, who would host these salons along with the Furtwanglers. If you guys ever come to Los Angeles, you can check out these homes that are owned now by the German government, and they have different talks, and they They host different diplomatic things that are super interesting and a very fascinating slice of history. And, you'll see Schoenberg and Thomas Mann got into a feud because Thomas Mann wrote the Dr. Faustus, and he kind of insulted Schoenberg, and it's a whole thing. There's a lot of fun gossip that happened back then also. So stay tuned. In 3 years, I should be writing a dissertation about this. So if you want to bore yourself to sleep in 3 years, just come and talk to me and I'll have something about this very topic.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I think we're gonna end there. Thank you guys so much for coming. It means a lot to all of us.
Your father is the champion of this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Noreen and Adam.
I think,
And
again,
thank you to all of you for coming.
Chloe literally made this happen. So
Yes, she
everyone,
did.
please give Chloe. Also to Hillel and everyone too back there, and already everyone. Thank you.
Oh, there you go.